In today's photo deconstruction, I'm going to show you how I use 5 strobes and gels to create a vibrant fashion image. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here. The use of gels is one of the most powerful ways to introduce super saturated colors into your photographs. And I use gels all the time. Sometimes I'll add a kiss of color to the background, maybe a little bit of fill to the shadows, maybe as a rim light. And then sometimes I use gels for all of those things, which is exactly what I'm doing in this image. And so today in this photo deconstruction, I'm going to break down the lighting, the post-processing, and how I created this image. The image you see here is from one of my fashion intensive workshops. In these workshops, I have a small number of students that I work with so that they can shoot hands-on to create striking photographs. We cover lighting that works for commercial photography, editorial, we cover gels, fashion, beauty, posing, business, and so much more. And so if you are interested in joining one of these intensive workshops, I do often have early bird specials, so you'll definitely want to check out the links in the description below and sign up way in advance because they always sell out. All right, so now over to the lighting. Let's take a look at the behind the scenes of how I created this shot. So in this image, there are 5 different strobes, and every single strobe has a job. I think that sometimes when I mention something having 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lights, it seems overwhelming. And for sure, it is a lot of gear, but when you break it down and give every light a job, it makes a lot more sense. It's a lot easier to digest. And so let's actually begin with our main light. Now the main light you'll see over here above the subject, to the left-hand side of the frame, which is a Westcott Optical Spot with the kit lens. Now the optical spot, what it allows you to do is create slices of light, just really concentrated, crisp, hard light. In fact, if I just wanted a slice of light only around one part of the subject's eye, I could do that with this modifier. So this one is created by Westcott, and by the way, even though it is on a ProPhoto strobe, you can get it so that the mount works for Bowens, Broncolor, Elinchrom, ProPhoto, and others. All right, so we have the optical spot. Now what's nice is that as the subject is moving, we can close the shutters that are built into this optical spot in order to create just little slices of light or broaden it based on the subject's pose. And so in this behind the scenes shot, you can see that it's lighting her entire face and even a little bit of her arm and her chest. However, in the final shot, we've actually narrowed the shutters to just light part of her face. Another element of the optical spot is that you can focus or defocus the lens on the front of this modifier. Now the kit that comes with the optical spot includes a lens. And so I can sharpen this lens and get a razor sharp edge of light, or I can soften it if I want something more diffused or with a gentler gradient to the edge of the shadow. All right, so in this shot, I went for relatively focused light, and in the end, I went for something very crisp, just lighting part of the subject's face. So that is light number 1. But if I just illuminated the subject with that light, she'd be a floating head. Like there would be no separation from the background, no rim lights, no fill light. And so that brings me on to our rim lights. Now in this shot, there are actually 2. You can see one on either side, and these are 1 by 4 foot strip softboxes. On them, there are grids which control the spill of light so that I'm not getting any lens flare or any unwanted bounce around the space. And in them, there are orange gels. Now, these aren't just CTOs. You might have heard of CTOs, color temperature orange. I'm not just going for a little orange, a little warm. I'm going for very, very warm, which is why I'm using a strong, thick, colored orange gel. Now, so what both of these do is they illuminate the side of the subject's face. They illuminate her profile, the side of her neck, the side of her body. And so you could create an image with just the optical spot and these 2 rims. But my goal for this shot was to create a kaleidoscope of colors. I wanted many different saturated colors in the image. And so then I asked myself, all right, so if I have a gel on the rim lights, where else could I introduce gels in this shot? Now, I have a course called The Magic of Gels. This is a video tutorial along with a lighting recipe guide. And in these, I have many different setups that show you a variety of creative ways that you can use gels. And so you'll definitely want to check that out if you want to have a better understanding of how to create saturated colors and exactly control where they go in the frame. And one of the things you learn in this course is that gels show up most in shadow areas. And so I know if I created a slice of light on the face, that there's shadows on her body. And if there's rim lights, well, there's also no light on the background. So I can then add a gel either to the fill or to the background or to both, which is what I do in this shot. So you can see our fill light over to the right-hand side. It is a medium umbrella with diffusion and a cyan gel. Basically what this does is it lifts up the shadows, but any place that it touches that had shadows, it gives it a blue cyan cast, which is really nice because it's giving us an additional layer of color to this shot. So it'll fill in on the front of the subject, and then the background that we have here, this is a fashion gray background. Any place that is not being hit by light, well, it'll also get some of this blue fill. So you can actually see in the top of the frame here that the background is appearing a little blue. It's not a blue background, it's some of this fill light also spilling onto the gray, making it blue. So we have two strips, our main light, our blue fill light, and then our final strobe is our background light. So for the background light, it's just tucked just behind the subject here, just out of sight, and it's a bare bulb with a magenta gel. We have it pointed relatively low, and this is on purpose, because what this will do is it'll make the bottom of the seamless paper appear magenta, and then it will fade off. But then the top of the frame behind the subject will appear blue because it's been filled in by that fill blue in the front. And so we'll get a magenta that fades to purple, that fades to blue. And so it'll create a beautiful gradient of color. Now, by the way, I also mentioned that paper. Again, if you want to see, it's Savage Universal Fashion Gray. This is my go-to background color when I am gelling and when I want to achieve a super saturated color. I lean to this more than a white, and I never use black. So if you want to learn more about that, remember the magic of gels. We'll go into that a little bit more in depth. All right, so before we move on and take a look at our post-processing, let's look at the camera and lens I chose. For this shot, I shot with the Canon R5, which is my go-to camera because it is an incredible mirrorless camera. It makes my job so easy. And then I paired it with a 24-105. This is because it's going to allow me to get wider shots as well as close-up beauty shots. So most of these images, I went to 3/4 length all the way to tight beauty shots, which of course I can achieve with this lens. I was shooting at 1/200th of a second, f11, ISO 200. The reason that I did that is I wanted everything to be really graphic, crisp, in focus. Having a narrow depth of field would take away from me because I want everything to have perfectly sharp edges. Okay, so with that, let's see what I captured in camera versus what was achieved in post. So this is the shot straight out of camera, 0 changes. I think it's beautiful. Like it already looks great. I would be happy to show this image. Now, as I'm looking at it, a couple things you want to note is that, do you see that there are these pretty little highlights reflecting off of the sequins on her dress? Well, that is created because I used a Tiffin 4-point star filter. This star filter, what it does is it takes reflections and it creates starbursts. But in this case, the way that the light was hitting, it was actually being illuminated by the rim lights. You can see the orange there is by the strip softbox. That's a softer light source. It's not as specular, so it doesn't create the really defined highlights. Instead, it's a little bit more of a subtle glow, which I think also makes it look a little more cinematic, a little bit more dramatic. So it's a 4-point star filter. But whenever you introduce a star filter into your photography, when you put it on the lens, it decreases the contrast in the shot overall. And you can see that. I don't quite have a true white point or a true black point, and I think the shot could benefit from clarity. And so that's exactly what I did in the next step of this process, which is my processing of the raw. So here's straight out of camera, and this is what I achieved in the raw. Now you'll notice I brightened up by like a 1.5 stops, and the face, perhaps you would say it's gone overexposed. This is a stylistic choice. This is not something that you would have to do. You don't have to brighten it up that much. But what I did is I went into the skin tone here, and I grabbed anything that was kind of yellowish, and I desaturated even more and brightened it up, in addition to brightening up the shot by a 1.5 stops. So I wanted to go for this pale look, and the reason I did is I wanted everything to have gels. And then her face, which doesn't have a gel, I wanted to have almost no color. Basically, to eliminate that color, I overexposed and desaturated the skin tone, which is why she appears white. I also love the detail that you can see that the rim light that was lighting her neck, see how beautifully long her neck looks? I love that. It's emphasizing her jawline, her neck, and then even a little bit of kiss of light on her eye. And there was not orange eye makeup there, but that's the light hitting in her eye socket. I think that looks beautiful. So this is what I achieved in the raw process. I brightened things up. I also saturated the rest of the colors just a little bit, and then I added a lot of clarity. Clarity is what brought back that detail in the midtones that I lost from adding a star filter. So then what would I retouch? I mean, there's not too much to retouch here for sure. Just maybe a little bit of texture on the skin, but hardly any. Maybe would clean up a little peach fuzz on the face, maybe a little bit on the neck. And then the hair is a little bit uneven. Since I'm going for so clean and graphic, I like the edges of the hair to be perfect because again, the shot is meant to be graphic. So this is what I achieved with retouching. So you can see I smoothed everything out. I brought back a little more detail in the face, got rid of a little of the peach fuzz on the side of her face next to her ear, and I just perfected everything. So now that you know how this was lit, you can look at the shot and break it apart. You can see an orange rim light lighting her hair and her back, as well as her profile and her neck. You can see the reflections off of the sequins. Then you see the blue fill in the front. You can tell that obviously we're using some kind of specialty tool or hard light on her face because of that nice hard slice, which is the optical spot. And then lastly, you can see that there is the light point at the bottom of the frame with the magenta gel, which fades up, goes from magenta to purple to blue, and the blue on the background is some spill from that fill light. So now that you know how I did it, you can look at the shot and break it apart. So if you are interested in learning more about gels and how I achieve these super saturated colors, you'll want to check out my course, The Magic of Gels, or pick up the lighting recipe guide. If you already have a little bit of familiarity with the tools, but you want inspiration for many different setups. And then if you'd like to join me in person, I do many workshops every single year here in my studio. And so for the fashion photography intensive, which you see here, the first day we do beauty photography, the second we do fashion photography, and the third we go on location. So you want to check out learnwithlindsay.com and go to the workshop section so you can learn more about that. So guys, if you'd like to see more photo deconstructions and you've enjoyed this one, be sure to like and subscribe because I have many more videos just like this one coming your way. See you next time.